In the 1800s, there were two types of people at the bottom of the social hierarchy. One was slaves, the other were factory workers. Both had long working hours and terrible conditions, but the question remained, was it worse to be a slave or a factory worker during the 1800s?
We may have found the answer to that question. It's worse to be a slave than a factory worker. During this time, slaves were often mistreated, which was a common. Any wrongdoings done by slaves would lead to whippings, jailings, and even death. In factories, those workers were getting paid for the work they were contributed in a 13-hour day.
Whereas your regular slave wouldn't get paid a penny, this comes from the idea that slaves were property and therefore didn't have any rights and could not read nor write. As Hugh Blair stated, here the overload slave flings down his burden from his gouged shoulders, and then the cruel tyrant with all his guards and tools of power about him is meditating new, unheard of hardships, mocks the short arm and quick as thought escapes where tyrants vexed not and weary rest, which highlights the account of slavery in the South.
Many slaves experienced mistreatment while on plantation. An account from an incident in the life of a slave girl gives us an insight of the mistreatment. One example was the fact that little attention was given to slave meals. It also highlights how a grandmother was separated from her family and sold into slavery auctions.
Overall, these valid points are reasons as to why slavery was worse than factory work. Even despite the 13-hour days workers worked in comparison to the 9 slaves worked, slaves did not have free will, whereas factory workers did.